there are a lot of young and rising teams in the NBA, young cores, and when it comes to the Pistons and the Charlotte Hornets, I'm sure the broader basketball fan base, when they think of these two teams, with the Pistons, they think about Cade Cunningham, they think about lottery pick Asar Thompson, as people want to see what the Thompson twins look like, and then with the Hornets, of course, you got LaMelo Ball, who just got his rookie extension over the offseason, number 2 pick Brandon Miller, who was a much, I wouldn't say controversial, but was picked over Scoot Henderson, which a lot of people disagreed with, and he's looked pretty solid so far. But these two teams also have possible franchise cornerstone centers that can move forward with their young cores for the foreseeable future that casual fans should get familiar with. Both of them were drafted in the 2022 NBA draft. They were drafted 2 picks apart from each other, and then of course one of them went through, well, 2 trades technically. But casual fans should familiarize themselves with Pistons starting center Jalen Duren and Hornets starting center Mark Williams. Both of these centers got minutes last year and showed flashes of, one, their physical traits. These two dudes are massive human beings with impressive physical traits and sort of similar styles when it comes to running the floor and having long wingspans and using those arms to weaponize drop coverage and all that stuff. But also both of these centers have different qualities as well. And last year when these two rookies were playing for their respective teams, they eventually started, and when they started, it yielded some positive results. And of course, with, the downside of being a young team, there's also going to be some drawbacks, some growing pains. But both of these centers are now entrenched in the starting position, and as the season goes along this year, they're going to be looking to take big steps in their second years. The Hornets and Pistons played each other over the weekend, and that was a physical, testy game, as there were a few scuffles. There was even a flagrant 2 at the end of the game. Isaiah Stewart just loves to get in the fucking mix. But let's start with Jalen Duren, because I did a video on the Pistons. They're one of the young cores I'm very high on. Jalen Duren might be the Pistons' second most important young player in this core going forward, in a core that's very talented. When you have a franchise lead guard like Cade Cunningham, I think it's imperative to place him with a big that fits around his skill set, and a big that can run the floor, a big that can defend, and a big that can pass. And Jalen Duren at the age of 19 fits these categories. And let me get back to the point that Jalen Duren is 19 years old and doesn't turn 20 until November 18th. And yet this dude is 6'10", 250 pounds, has a 7'6" wingspan, and there were no official measurements. He didn't measure at the combine during his draft, but that dude has large hands, and his physical traits popped last year, and in the 31 starts, it was very apparent that this guy was going to be the Pistons' franchise center for the foreseeable future. And Jalen Duren this year, in the 4 games at least, he didn't play against the Portland Trail Blazers because of an ankle injury. He hurt himself in the Oklahoma City Thunder game. But so far this year, Jalen Duren is averaging a double-double. His per 36 minutes last year as a rookie was a double-double, because remember, he didn't start for a lot of the season, only started 31 games. But 15.5 points per game, 13.3 rebounds per game, and then of course the big number in that rebounding total is he's averaging 5.3 offensive rebounds, and that was something that was immediately apparent in his rookie year. He averaged 3.4 offensive rebounds per game, but he's upped his blocks as well. But another thing that popped last year with Duren as a rookie was that he was a very nifty passer. When the Pistons traded for James Wiseman last year, there were some times where they would go with double lineups, and Duren would surprisingly fit passes in tight quarters with Wiseman, with Marvin Bagley. And I also feel like that's kind of a reason why Monty Williams, the new head coach, is rolling with the double big lineup this year of Duren and Isaiah Stewart, because Duren can pass. And my favorite thing, I always talk about it a lot with big men when I do videos, is a way to get them playmaking is to do dribble handoffs, and Duren can absolutely do that with Cade Cunningham. He can also hit cutters. Now, he can get a little fancy sometimes, but again, the kid is 19 years old, and he is already showing immense potential. The guy runs the floor hard. He plays his ass off. He outruns his opposing centers, constantly running the floor, rim running. And when he dunks, it's like there are people who dunk, there are big men who dunk, and then there are big men that when they dunk, it looks like they're about to tear the rim off. And it looks like Jalen Duren is about to tear the rim off every time he dunks the ball with his big hands. And the thing is, the Pistons have some guards that can get Duren the ball. Cade Cunningham, of course, is a very good passer. Jaden Ivey, with his speed, can create passing windows. They can lob it over the top. Asar Thompson has shown to be a nifty passer as well, and whenever Duren gets the ball near the basket, it's just going to be 2 points. The guy is shooting 68% on two-pointers, and I think he's somebody that fans should be watching this year, or casual fans should be watching if they're interested in tracking the development of the Pistons. Now we move to the Hornets, and they kind of have a similar thing going on. I've noticed a trend with these young teams. Big ball handlers, big guards, big wings across the roster, and then you just have a big man in the middle that runs the floor, is huge, can be the anchor of your defense, and that's what Mark Williams showed in his 17 starts last year. I brought it up in a Brandon Miller video I did over the summer, but the Charlotte Hornets had the second-rated defense post All-Star break, and that was with the final 2 weeks of the season basically being awful because at that point their main players weren't playing. But Mark Williams started 17 games post All-Star break, and you could see the numbers up on the screen. And if there is one thing he showed immediately is that he is long, he is huge, and like Jalen Duren, runs the floor, offensive rebounds, and he can anchor a drop coverage scheme. And there were some possessions last year where Mark Williams would go up to the level to help out his teammate who was guarding the ball, and he would use his long arms and his 7'5" wingspan. Mark Williams is 7'2" in shoes. He did have his measurements done at the combine, and he would have his hands high and he would get deflections. And that's a lob target for LaMelo Ball, Gordon Hayward, Brandon Miller as he gets more time. Now, Mark Williams has had a few games to start the year where he has struggled, and in that Pistons game, he just got pushed around by Jalen Duren, got in foul trouble, and it wasn't a good showing for him. But that guy is also just 21 years old, and he's not going to be the passer that Jalen Duren is, but with his rim running and his ability to catch lobs everywhere, that's just going to suck in the defense. 78% of Mark Williams' shots came at the rim last year, and he shot 70%, but that's perfectly fine. That's his role. He's not there to be a dribble handoff guy. He doesn't have the passing chops that Jalen Duren does, but what he can be and what his upside is and what I see is that he can be the anchor for a Steve Clifford defense. That is a Steve Clifford guy. Now, of course, he needs to not be in foul trouble, and he needs to up his minutes a little bit more, but it's very clear that the Hornets have a cornerstone at the center position, and like I've been saying on this channel, I truly believe that big men need a dynamic wing/guard to play off of, and that is vice versa. Big men need a guard to help them get the ball in their spots much easier. And Mark Williams is shooting, so far this season, nearly 78% from two-point range. And like Jalen Duren, his per 36 numbers his rookie year and so far this year have been absurd, averaging a double-double per 36 minutes. When you're looking at someone like LaMelo Ball, who is struggling to start the year, but we all know his passing prowess, that is somebody that you could see is tailor-made to fit alongside LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, Brandon Miller as he gets more time. But the Hornets, for the longest time, were in desperate need of a center. Just the centers they had in the past were not cutting it. whether it was Cody Zeller, Mason Plumlee, Kai Jones, well, really don't need to say anything there, Montrezl Harrell, Nick Richards and JT Thor, nice second string, third string backup centers, but Mark Williams is the one center that the Hornets have drafted that has some legitimate upside and can be a cornerstone for this team for the foreseeable future. And both of these teams are young, they have young lead ball handlers, and to cap off their young core, they finally have their men in the middle to man everything.